The Two Deep NFL podcast is back at it here as we look ahead to Week 15. We look back on Week 14. The biggest news, the Kansas City Chiefs. A lot of fire out of Patrick Mahomes after an offsides call. Andy Reid talking about the NFL being embarrassed. Did the Chiefs embarrass themselves with their comments and their reaction to what happened in the Kadarius Toney call? Are the Bills back on track and all fixed now that they've won in Kansas City? They're only a game behind the Dolphins as Miami did their job to close the gap. Are the Eagles in real trouble? Will Dak Prescott win the MVP now that he has a signature win? Tyreek Hill, was his case made when he was out? The Dolphins did nothing. When he was in, they looked like world beaters. How about Tyreek Hill for the MVP? Who do you trust more, Jake Browning or Joe Flacco, as both the Browns and Bengals are fighting for playoff spots? Will Levis, Tommy DeVito, are they for real? The Ravens keep the top seed. What are you looking for in this week? We talk about it all right now on the Two Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Two Deep podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Two Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Two Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Two Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And good evening if you're catching us via the stream, via the podcast. Remember, we stream live Tuesday nights usually. Sometimes it's a Wednesday. Gentlemen, next week will be a Monday, correct? Because of some holiday travel, if I'm not mistaken, Eric. Is that right? We'll do it live on Monday. Is that right?
We are. Yeah. By the way, this is not pickle juice. This is AG1. By the way, AG1, if you want to sponsor the podcast, come and get us.
What is that?
What is that?
It's like called athletic greens, right? It's like it's like I was telling the guys off air that like my stomach is kind of recovering from going to Army Navy game, eating all the tailgate, all that stuff. I'm getting older, guys. I know I'm not, I can't do that anymore. But if you want to sponsor the podcast, AG1. Sponsor the podcast.
Yeah, Athletic Greens, a couple of things. One, he was trying to say, I know I'm getting older. I'm not as old as you two. Yes, that's true. Eric is the child amongst the group. Don't let his behavior fool you. I think, it's your little tummy problems. Can't go out and party like you used to, huh? I love
Welcome to the club.
Not great.
I find it interesting that you're eating athletic greens. I don't know that you're athletic enough to be eating athletic greens. Let me just say that. But okay, sure.
Wow, that's a lot coming. Pat. Okay. All right. Well.
Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
I mean, look,
coming from a fat ass like you, that takes some stones. Is that what you're gonna say?
Look, Petro, in a fight, I don't know who would win because I know you're scrappy, and I know you would, yeah. But I have a lot of reach. I probably outweigh you too. But I have the reach though, so we'll see. I don't know.
Okay, all right. Apparently, we're gonna fight.
I'm not gonna fight you but.
After the Super Bowl. Apparently, that's coming about. I didn't realize it, but there you go. Now I see why. Here, the question was, is that pickle juice? What the hell's going on there? No.
Yeah, see, look, I'm trying to hawk sponsors, Petro.
I like it. Bring them in. Let's go. We'll take them. Yeah. Our folks at Gann said hello. I mentioned in our last podcast from down at the holiday party, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Love to have a little company. We'd love to have another holiday party to go to because I had a great time at the Gann party. Great folks, great people, and, of course, great at what they do. That is solving all your parking lot problems. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. All right, let's talk about the situation, a little different angle than our last podcast, but The Chiefs, they've been the big dog, the team that everybody's been gunning for, Jeff. And now here they were basically upset over a call. The officiating's been bad around the league, I think, for years. So the idea that right now they're like, oh, we're going to be the ones that get to the bottom of this, I'm not so sure. Would you use the term embarrassing, though, when it comes to the reactions from Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid?
I would not. I understand why some people would if you're not really following this team. You just go off what you saw in that moment based off one call. But if you follow this team, you know that a lot of that frustration, it goes beyond Kadarius Toney lining up offside. The call was perfectly fine in terms of him being offside. But this is a team all season long that has been playing at a level they're not accustomed to. They're having to play a style they're not accustomed to. They're seeing things happen when the ball's in the air that they've never seen happen with Patrick Mahomes throwing it. And look, the numbers are down. I mean, it's their pride's taking a hit. Their patience is taking a hit. And that was, to me, the last straw. You know, it was for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. They aren't the kind of guys who want to come out and bash teammates and, you know, blow up in the media about the way things are going, but you know they feel it. And in a lot of ways, the more I've thought about this, the more I think this is a really good test for Mahomes as far as being an NFL quarterback. Something we take for granted, like how long he's actually been a quarterback in his life. Like he didn't start playing football until he was, what, junior year in high school, sophomore year in high school, and I think he was a DB his sophomore year. So he's really been a quarterback not as long as a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady or some of these guys who are used to jumping on people and getting on people, being aggressive. It's okay to be that kind of quarterback. And this team needs somebody to do it. I mean, Eric Bieniemy is gone. And without having that kind of disciplinary accountability type coach around, like Andy's not that guy. And so maybe it does fall on Patrick to do that. And I don't want to get too off on a tangent about this, but I just feel like I understood why they felt the way they felt. They were just being upset about things that had nothing to do with an offside call.
Yeah, maybe embarrassment's not the right word, Eric. Maybe it's what Jeff just said. It's like the realization is setting in for the first time in 6 or 7 years that maybe they're not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, we said that in 19. We said that in 22 at times. They've always been better when it was kind of somebody else's Super Bowl, even though last year was kind of touchy, as depending upon whose Super Bowl it was. But yeah, I mean, I think, much like 2019, you're looking up at Baltimore, you're looking up possibly at, Buffalo or Miami, a team that they've already beaten. But yeah, I think, and granted, like, that's probably maybe where they want to be, right? Like, as far as, not necessarily being the hunted, not taking everybody's best punch, but this is a team that's not playing at the caliber. We said on the last show, the Red Golden Bowl, the Best Chiefs podcast, that they're 7th in expected points added on offense. Last year they were first. They were first with a bullet last year relative to every other team in the NFL. So they're still a top 10 offense, if anybody can believe it. But because they're not, head and shoulders above the league, it just feels different for them. And as such, they're underdogs to win the Super Bowl. Going into Week 15.
I had the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl, so losing to the Buffalo Bills is not. It looks bad when they're 6-6 and everyone thinks they're done. They weren't done. They've got some talent on that team. Jeff, does this mean that the Bills are back on track and we can just go ahead and say, okay, the Bills we thought they were going to be coming into this year, minus the injuries, Matt Milano, Tre'Davious White, but they're back, maybe believing in themselves. Is this the get right game for them that launches them to a strong finish?
Yes. And I've been saying this for weeks that if you follow that team, they have a history of getting hot at this time of year, and a lot of the same characters are around. I was doing a show for my network yesterday, and they rattled off all the things the Bills had been going through over the last, couple months, from all the injuries to Sean McDermott's comments, and pregame, practice comments, referring to 9/11, to Von Miller stuff. And I was like, this is like a typical year for the Bills. Like every year, it's like a zillion things going on around this team. And the good news for them is that they know how to play through that kind of stuff. And they got through a huge storm and we're still in a place where they could actually make some noise. When you look at their schedule, I think they beat the Cowboys this week because the Cowboys are coming off a huge win. And as much as I like the way Dallas is playing, they've beaten up on a lot of bad teams. So to going back-to-back with two good teams is going to be a test for them, especially on the road. But after that, it's Chargers, Patriots, and a Dolphins team that the Bills beat by 28 points in week 4 and just lost to the Titans. I mean, it's very conceivable that they're playing for the AFC East crown by the time we get to the new year.
11-6 is still possible. With that win, the AFC East, Dolphins would have one game margin of error there. They'd need to beat the Bills, so I guess you couldn't get there without them. They can't get there without also beating the Dolphins. So the Bills, how much of a believer are you? How much are you a believer that they can and will win the AFC East?
They can't. I believe I'd have to look at the tiebreakers, but I do think the Bills can actually win the division if they were to go 3-1 and the Dolphins were to go well.
Yeah, they can
if they tie.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about if the Bills were defeated, it'd be impossible for them to not pass the Dolphins.
It's going to be next to impossible for them not to pass the Dolphins because the Dolphins play, the pretty tough schedule. The Dolphins coming into last night had the 3rd easiest schedule in the NFL. They have the toughest schedule down the stretch. So I do think the path is there. I think that the folks like us who picked the Bills to win the Super Bowl, were onto something. It just was a little bit of noise, Petro, on the first 12 games of the season. But look, Buffalo still has some issues, right? I do think it is funny that everybody's talking about Patrick Mahomes. Is this like, not everybody, but like the bad actors out there are talking about Patrick Mahomes as if he's some moral failure after Sunday's game when the play after the Kadarius Toney play, Von Miller, who was actually a moral failure, having beaten up his pregnant girlfriend, was offside. And so I do think there's issues in Buffalo, right? The head coach is clearly like on the edge of, teetering around the edge. Their best, their highest paid player on defense is dealing with legal issues. So it is tenuous at best. But when you have an elite quarterback, as everybody in Kansas City knows, you can cover a multitude of sins, and the Bills certainly have that. So I wouldn't count them out, but they're not out of the woods yet for sure.
They are 3-6 now in games decided by one score. They were 2-6 coming in. All their losses have been by one score. They've delayed the beatdown. I mean, I can see a scenario that if they roll out and win some close games here, that you say, okay, they're kind of 5. If they win 3 close games and a blowout the rest of the way, they'd be 6-6 in close games and with 5 ass kickings. You'd be like, okay, that's a pretty good team, right? Like, I think styles make fights, and I think the Chiefs might have been the right matchup for their defense because Clyde Edwards-Helaire wasn't going to test Matt Milano's replacement, catching the ball out of the backfield. So I think that bodes well. They don't have an established receiving core to take advantage of Tre'Davious White. So the Bills may look a lot shinier against the Chiefs than they will against other teams, right? Like, I know they handle the Dolphins. The Dolphins are considered soft, but the Dolphins have a better chance to exploit the weaknesses on the Bills' defense the next time around, don't they, Jeff?
They do. I mean, that's always going to be an issue for Buffalo, but I also feel like as in every season, if you can score points and if you've got a great quarterback, you got a chance to make hay. And so if you're asking me, do I think the second time Miami and Buffalo play, it might be a different story? It could. I don't know how serious Tyreek Hill's injury is, but that loss to the Titans yesterday told me that Miami's not ready to win those kind of games just yet. And so that last game of the season is going to be in Buffalo. The Dolphins still have to play the Ravens and the Cowboys in consecutive weeks. And that's a tough road to go. I mean, every team, one thing that's been true about this season is that every good team has had to face some kind of stretch where they've really been challenged, having to play tough games back to back to back, which is one reason why, and we'll get to the Cowboys in a second, they had a great win against Philadelphia. But Philadelphia played the Cowboys, they played the Chiefs, they played the Bills, they played the Niners, then they played the Cowboys again. I mean, I don't know how you can get through that undefeated. And so I feel like a lot of that's going to happen in Miami at the end, where losing that game against the Titans was monumental as far as their own journey, but is also giving Buffalo did very well this weekend, getting the win in Kansas City and then getting that loss from Miami.
How about this from Tommy? He says, hey, Jeff, how can Von Miller and Zay Jones get arrested for domestic violence and not be put on the commissioner's list, but Justin Ross did? Got any?
I don't know. Am I Roger Goodell now?
I mean,
you ever know what goes into decisions?
Well, I think no, we don't.
There's just two NFL employees. I'm not sure what the difference. I don't see a difference here.
Yeah,
for like 15 years.
I think there's wording in there like the commissioner's discretion, but I think what it comes down to is they've read the background on, they've taken in all the information and they see. And by the way, Justin Ross did go diversion, which is somewhat an admission of guilt.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a guilty plea, but you're like, hey, I'm not going to fight this. You're somewhat acknowledging it, but let me off with a lesser sentence. I'll go do this.
But he went in, he was on the list before that happened, though, if I remember correctly. He wasn't just on the list after he went in the diversion program. He went immediately on the list.
No, he was. But what I'm saying is, I think the commissioner gets all the information that they can get.
Yeah.
And it's on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that's true.
In talking to people in Buffalo, there are people in Buffalo. I mean, the woman apparently recanted, which is there are laws on why you can't do that because a lot of times there's a victim remorse psychology to what goes on and everything. I'm not trying to pick one side or the other in that one, but that is part of what's gone on there. And in Justin Ross, my assumption is he looked at it and said, I think it's pretty clear. The only conclusion you come to is the commissioner looked at Justin Ross and said he did it, and he looked at Von Miller and said, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Or he didn't do it.
Yeah.
That's
not to be the arbiter here, but this isn't the first time Miller has like roughed up somebody before. Like, are we like?
Is it?
I didn't know that.
That's news to me because and everyone I talked to in Buffalo said this is completely out of character for him.
Yeah, I've never heard that. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm an idiot.
Yeah, but not to be flippant, but I was being flipped with the Goodell comment. But I think that is true that they're going to investigate every case independently and try to come to a conclusion about what the thing about Justin Ross. I think that was more of a situation. There was some physical damage to the property, right? Is that was part of the conversation with him? Yeah, and so I think that's a lot easier to make a conclusion about. Where I think Von Miller, it's more like a he said, she said type thing. And that can make it a lot stickier. So I think that may be the determining thing here.
We're probably brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they make them disappear. If you own a business or manage a business, I'll let Gann Asphalt and Concrete make sure you leave a great first and last impression with all your customers. Find them online at gannasphalt.com. Are the Eagles in trouble, Eric? Jeff just went through the schedule that they've been, but are there more problems there? Defensively, the numbers are pretty bad for Philly this year.
Yeah, I mean, they're deep. This has been a team, and again, this is why, guys like us, we talk about the underlying fundamentals. We don't just talk about who wins and loses, right? So the Eagles have trailed at halftime for 6 consecutive games. Now they've won 4 of those games, and the first 4 of them, everybody's like, oh, they're gritty. They come back, and this is the type of team that wins football games and all this kind of stuff. And but like we all know, like we just talked about it last week or last podcast, where it's like it's not great to be down 14-0. Like there are leading indicators here that have been rough for the Eagles. Corner, Bradbury was a buy low guy, played really well last year. Now he's kind of reverting back to some averages. Darius Slay is not getting any younger. Their linebacking core, like, you're talking about Nicholas Morrow, you're talking about Zach Cunningham. They cut the dude that the Niners put through a blender, Ellis. And so this is a team that's like kind of weak in some kind of, very tangible places of their defense, and they're getting caught off guard. They're getting caught with it a little bit. On offense, Jalen Hurts is very clearly not 100%, and I think it's affecting them. And AJ Brown, what was it, 6 straight games with 125 yards, and it's not like he's like falling off the face of the earth. He had 9 catches for 90-something yards against the Cowboys. But if he's not putting up 150 yards a game, it's going to be hard for them to win. So I think that I think that they're not in trouble in the sense that you have 2 more games against the Giants. You have a game, I believe, against the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so they should be able to like weather the storm here and win out and win that division based on tiebreakers and stuff. And Dallas's tough schedule. But I would be hard pressed to bet them to win the Super Bowl or even make the Super Bowl again in the NFC.
They were making the point the other night that if the Eagles just went out, they'll get back in front of the Cowboys because of how the tiebreakers would work out. So are they in trouble, Jeff? You made the great point. That schedule was a gauntlet they had to go through, but would you consider them in trouble right now?
I think they're not in big trouble, but you can see a lot of red flags around them. The defense has been a concern all year long, and it's when you saw the way Dallas lit them up, you saw the way San Francisco lit them up. What the problem for them right now, they don't have an easy fix on that side of the football because they are very simple in how they play defensively. They rely a lot on their defensive front to get pressure, and the guys on the back end eat off that. And when they're not getting that same amount of pressure, I don't know where they're at sack-wise this year, but I know it's nowhere close to what they were doing last year at this time or over the course of the season. And so that's tough. And teams know we can attack their linebackers. We can attack their corners. We can take advantage of it if we have the right personnel. And that's a tough place to be. There's only so much you can do on the offensive side of the football to offset that kind of stuff. Now, they have the pedigree. They're clutch. But I would say no team in the NFC needs that by more than them because they do not want to be playing 3 playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. They need 2 games at home to make it work. If they can't get that, I don't see them getting back.
Yeah. I don't think they're in trouble, but I mean, they're going to have to win it differently. They're going to have to play really well on offense. I mean, I don't think you can talk about Kansas City's problems with their offense. I don't think that, I don't think there's a solution for their receivers. I don't think there's a solution for the Eagles' problems on defense. They better get real hot on offense because they're going to have to score some people. Now, they can outscore some people, but that's where it's going to have to come from. Did Dak Prescott, is this the signature win, Jeff, that gives him the MVP now?
Your favorite quarterback.
My favorite quarterback, but you called
right.
You said, listen, this is what he needs, and he went out and did it.
Did it, yeah. I mean, look, I laugh sometimes. People keep saying, man, if you don't see a quarterback pulling away from the pack, maybe Tyreek Hill ends up getting it. And I know that we're going to talk about him in a second. But Dak Prescott is pulling away from the pack. I don't think you can argue. Nobody else has his numbers this year. Not Josh Allen, not Patrick Mahomes, not Lamar Jackson. Nobody is playing the way Dak Prescott's been playing. And when you're playing that way for a team that's the marquee team in the league that is just beat the team that had the best record in the league that people thought was the first or second best team 2 weeks ago, you get credit for that. And so I almost feel like he's got to fight an uphill battle sometimes with his skeptics because he's been not at this level. But once you get to this level, you deserve all the flowers that you can get. And he's done enough. I mean, he's really – because I thought Tony Pollard would be a bigger part of that offense, and he hasn't been. We didn't know what Mark McCarthy was going to bring to the table. They've lost, obviously, a key player on defense with Trayvon Diggs. And they've been rolling because the quarterbacks played at a high level. So, yeah, I think that it's him and Brock Purdy, and I give him the nod over Purdy just because he doesn't have everything that Purdy has around him.
Eric, is it as simple as Dak Prescott's in front? Because even though Mike McCarthy has won a championship and Kyle Shanahan has not, that the idea is that Brock Purdy is just being propped up by Kyle Shanahan and somehow Dak Prescott is carrying Mike McCarthy because Mike McCarthy gets no due and Kyle Shanahan is Wonder Boy?
Well, you guys saw the Athletic article and what by Kalen Kaler and what I think of Mike McCarthy. This is an Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes situation on maybe a slightly smaller scale where we want to sort of divide credit and be like, it's this or this, when in reality, this is the top 3 offense in the NFL, top 2 offense in the NFL in EPA per play. And Dak Prescott is playing phenomenal football. And it took a long time for them to trust it. I had a tweet probably 2 months ago, and I'm somebody, we do, fantasy football analysis and stuff at Sumer. We had a lot of CeeDee Lamb. And when the Dallas Cowboys decided we're going to throw to CeeDee Lamb, it was like one of those Instagram posts where the baby put on glasses for the first time and like could see and like was smiling. It was like the one. I think that when this team decided to be confident and to throw to their best players, not throw 80 passes to Michael Gallup a game and not try to ram up the middle with Tony Pollard all the time, because he's been pretty bad this year, frankly. And they just let Dak Prescott cook, and they stopped being afraid of him throwing 3 interceptions in a game and stuff. This thing has taken off. I think I'm going to give a little bit more credit to Dak than to Mike McCarthy, but they've both been phenomenal. And Dak, to Jeff's point, Dak deserves the MVP. I think CeeDee Lamb, if Tyreek Hill wasn't playing the way he was, should win Offensive Player of the Year. He's just been the second best wide receiver in the NFL this year. And that tight end, Jake Ferguson, the kid from Wisconsin, is sort of the perfect. He's a Jason Witten kind of tough ass down the seam, and that's Dak's favorite throw. And so when you got a tight end running up one seam and CeeDee Lamb running up another through the slot, that has been very good for this offense. And I agree with Jeff. I think Brock Purdy gets more help than Dak, but Dak gets help from Mike McCarthy. But the fact of the matter is, just like Kansas City over the last 5 or 6 years, it's causing great enough offense where I'm willing to give both of them their flowers and say that they've both been tremendous.
Jeff, you want to make the case for Tyreek Hill?
Monday night.
Yeah.
3 minutes left in the first quarter. He goes down with an ankle injury, and their whole offense goes with him. That's all you have to see. It's like, we can talk about 2,000 yards receiving and all that stuff. I don't believe numbers matter as much in the NFL, except for maybe, 55 touchdown passes or 2,000 yards rushing.
Hard comparison.
Yeah, 17 games. Yeah, I mean, it's a running back going over 2,000 yards is way more impressive than a receiver getting 2,000 yards, especially in today's game, or even the 23 sacks, whatever. But the impact he's had on his offense since he's shown up in that franchise last year has been palpable, and you saw how much it affected them in that contest, because I guarantee you they probably would have won that game by 20 points if he's playing. And when he went out, Tua Tagovailoa looked like Brody Croyle out there. He had no chance of doing anything. Mike McDaniel turned into like a high school coach, just kind of sitting there. What am I doing here? Now, I know there were other injuries. The offensive line was a big part of it, but it changed the whole dynamic of the game. And he's the only receiver in this league who can have that kind of impact. And really, he's the most impactful non-quarterback in this league this year. So that's the case to be made for him.
I think the numbers do matter with Tyreek Hill, Eric, because I think it's, Dak is such a worthy candidate. Brock Purdy is a worthy candidate. I think for somebody other than a quarterback to win it, you have to do something special, and 2,000 yards would be special. 1998 might be enough. 1996, 1994. I don't know where the line is. But I think 2,000 is important for Tyreek Hill. I don't think he can win it without getting to 2,000 yards. Do you?
No, a wide receiver's never won it, right? I mean, that's, and to my point earlier, like CeeDee Lamb through 13 games has 96 catches for 1,253 yards, and he's nowhere close to the conversation. That's how good Tyreek Hill's been, right? Like that season would be a pretty solid, like that's where like Justin Jefferson's numbers were at this time last year. And, Hill has blown it away. I mean, I've made it 15-1 last week in the betting markets. I thought that was at least a good value, because I think that voters are into the novelty at times. They want to give it to a non-quarterback. The quarterbacks in this league have been bad and most of the year, including, relative to expectations. So yeah, I think Hill's made a case. I think the problem is like, from the way I've estimated it though, like a quarterback at the top end is worth four times as much as a wide receiver. So it's just really hard mathematically to do it. But I think if you're going to make an exception this year, much like, when Adrian Peterson, took the Vikings to the playoffs off of 2,000 yards in 2012, like if Tyreek Hill can drag this Miami team to the 1 or 2 seed, right, after you've seen brief moments without him, he makes a great case.
Jeff, let's move to the AFC North. Jake Browning or Joe Flacco? Two backup quarterbacks, what Joe Flacco is now, trying to lead AFC North teams. Like, I do think the one thing that's of note here is Pittsburgh noticed these guys, like, they basically grabbed them 5 minutes ago, and they're better than Kenny Pickett, the quarterback you have in Pittsburgh, the quarterback you want to be starting in Pittsburgh, and these guys might be as good or better than him right now. Who do you trust more, Browning or Flacco?
Browning. And I went back and forth on this one, and I've been impressed with what Joe Flacco has done. I give him a ton of credit for that, but Browning's a younger guy. He's playing with more talent on offense. And there's something about him that when you watch him play, like he's definitely fearless in how he plays. He doesn't look like a backup quarterback out there just trying to hang in. And ironically, he looks a lot like Brock Purdy did last year when he started playing, which was very comfortable, very aware of what he has around him, gets the ball to Jamar Chase a lot and spreads it around. The play calling this past weekend against the Colts was Jack Taylor was dialing things up for him. I mean, screen game was working tremendously. They're factoring in a lot more weapons for him. And Zach Taylor said they could run the whole offense with the guy. Now, he's not Joe Burrow, but they're running a lot of offense, and they've scored 65 points over the last 2 games with him, playing quarterback. So I think at some point Joe Flacco is going to look like Joe Flacco, but that comes with being whatever he is, 37, 38 years old.
Well, and Browning's no spring chicken, by the way. He's 27 years old.
He got beat out by Sean Mannion and Kellen Mond 2 years ago to be Kirk Cousins' backup, even though
that might be more of an indictment on the Vikings than it is
I mean, maybe remember the time where Kirk Cousins and Kellen Mond and got COVID, and Jake Browning was like the greatest things to slice bread to Mike Zimmer because he was the only quarterback that could practice, and he struggled so much in training camp they couldn't keep him. Is he Billy Bullock and Drew Bennett? Like, is he one of those flashes in the pan where it kind of, that sustained itself for 6-7 weeks? If that's the case, then I think a team like the Chiefs is in trouble. I think they're going to make the playoffs, all this stuff. Or is he, is it a flash in the pan? I really like what the Bengals have done. Their defenses they've faced have been, a really suspect Colts defense that has been a sieve all year, and a Jaguars defense that is making us talk about Joe Flacco right now because they were so bad the other day. So I'm skeptical on both. I would trust Flacco in the sense that if I'm looking at which team is going to do anything, the Browns defense is much better than the Bengals defense, which has been a big play sieve this year and was helped out a lot by turnovers the other day. So I'm going to say Flacco just because I think that the support in Cleveland is weirdly better than in Cincinnati. But I am impressed with what Browning has done since taking over that job.
Have you looked at Browning's numbers at Washington?
And he cost me a F ton of money, Petro, betting Pac-12 after dark overs because that Washington offense couldn't score enough points.
What year?
Well, yeah, after he got injured sophomore year, he was a privilege after that. Yeah,
that's the point. Freshman 16-10 touchdown to INT. Sophomore 43-9. Then 19-5, 16-10. Like, there is something that's like, oh, he looks pretty good. And by the way, he's got 5 touchdowns in 5 games. Like, they're winning, which is the most important part. But isn't this more a flag in the ground for Zach Taylor? Like, Eric even like because Eric, you were kind of negative on Zach Taylor the other day. This looks pretty good.
Nothing takes the air out of that stadium like a Joe Mixon run on first down, of which there were a million when I was living in Cincinnati and going to their games. But no, I think they've changed it up nicely. I mean, necessity is a good, innovative elixir, right? Like they've got an explosive running back that they've been giving the ball. It's like Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, right? Najee Harris with all the carries is not that great. Najee Harris with half the carries is a lot better. Joe Mixon, half the carries has been pretty effective. And, I think that they've been good, but it's born out of necessity, which I wish that they would just have been creative and good all year with Joe Burrow, especially when Joe Burrow was not playing with a full deck of cards, injured in the first part of the year.
I mean, listen, at the risk of going down a rabbit hole, because I'm a big believer in you throw to win and you run when you're winning. But Kyle Shanahan hands off to Christian McCaffrey. They're winning. One of his proteges in Miami, Mike McDaniel, hands off to Mostert. They're winning. Zach Taylor came from the same Shanahan tree that Kyle Shanahan did. He was on the same staff. He hands off to Mixon. They've been winning and are winning again with the style of football that he plays. Sean McVay was on that Washington staff under Kyle Shanahan as well. And at his best, he hands off the football, whether it's to Cam Akers in the Super Bowl or the old Georgia back that he had that they steamed to their first Super Bowl with. I mean, I don't know, Jeff. I mean, is old school, new school, like that? That's how you beat these shell defenses is, light box, pound the rock.
Football doesn't change. I mean, as much as we've seen different innovations and different, obviously freakazoid type players like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson turn up. I mean, it's still, as a coach told me a long time ago when I started covering the NFL, easiest thing to do in this league is to run it. Second easiest thing to do is to run it or fake the run and drop back. And the hardest thing to do is to just drop back and throw it. And so there's always a value in having not a dominant run game, but the threat of the run. And so, I mean, I think that there is value in how Zach Taylor is approaching it. He is taking a page out of a playbook that he's seen Kyle Shanahan and McVay and all these other guys use. But they've also put good people around that quarterback, both those quarterbacks. And so if you watch them play, you're like, Chase Brown was a stud running back at Illinois, and I don't know how he got this fast, but he was like running 22 miles an hour with a screen pass the other day in that game. Jamar Chase obviously has been a stud. Tyler Boyd's been a stud. These tight ends are coming out of nowhere for them. They've got guys who are hurt, like that kid from Princeton, who's I always mispronounce his name, but they're a well-built roster, and more importantly, they understand how to adjust to what they have around them. Joe Burrow is a great quarterback, but they're doing things that help Jake Browning play at a high level, and I give Zach Taylor a ton of credit for that.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about a couple of other quarterbacks. Will Levis and Tommy DeVito. You buying stock in either one of these guys, Eric?
Tommy DeVito.
Is that what ocean is that?
That's his thing, right?
I was going to say that's like if you're in like one of those strip joints in Atlanta, that's a whole different conversation.
It's also you turn that hand just a little bit, and your gesture becomes something entirely different.
Speaking a different language.
Yeah.
Well, here's my list of Giants quarterbacks in the history of the franchise. I'm just going to go with this right now. It goes Eli, Y.A. Tittle, Phil Simms, Jeff Hostetler, Tommy DeVito, Geno Smith, and Daniel Jones. That's my order of Giants quarterbacks, in case you were wondering. No, I mean, the guy's gutsy as heck. He's certainly like there's an element of the swag that I like. What he's wearing to the game, like his agent being the biggest caricature I've ever seen in my life, with the hat and all this kind of stuff. No, I mean, he's won 3 games. That's more than Tyrod and Daniel Jones won this year combined. He's got Brian Dable going from, a one shade of red to a lighter shade of red on the sideline with his face. I like that he's steady. Now, does it really kind of show the rasp for being a $40 million contract into, Daniel Jones? Probably. So that's not great. But yeah, I mean, I kind of this conversation, guys, has been fun because are we a month away from a few, like maybe 6 or 7 guys securing really long careers in the NFL as backups? And, with kind of Chase Daniel kind of, careers. I think that's if Tommy DeVito beats the Eagles once, let's say, that would be in the next 4. He made a very good case, to be this team's backup quarterback moving forward.
I like this. Tommy DeVito equals Jeremy Lin. Going old.
So Josh Dobbs was Jeremy Lin.
Okay.
Tommy DeVito has not crashed and burned yet.
Not yet.
Is he your Billy Volek? That's the name you used a second ago.
But the problem is Tommy DeVito's not airing it out, right? He's running. He's very athletic, right? I bet a lot of Tommy DeVito rushing props when he was at Syracuse.
Is that where he's from?
Is that Syracuse?
Syracuse guy?
He started Syracuse for several years, and then 1 year at Illinois.
Yeah, okay. So another orange, hideous uniforms, but he
likes the color, orange and blue.
Yeah,
look,
look. I think he's got something going on. I mean, is he Bucky Richardson or Taysom Hill, where you're going to have him like being a punt protector? In the future, maybe. But right now, he's kind of fun. I don't know.
You buying?
Petro ran him off as a good.
You like that one? Yeah, this was. I ran him off from Syracuse.
He didn't even mention him. Like I was like, seriously, what was the last Syracuse quarterback Soren could talk about? Not named Donovan McNabb.
Not named Donovan McNabb. At the NFL level.
Yeah. Has there been one?
Well, the Browns had a guy. Was it Todd Philcox?
I remember him.
Todd Philcox was in the league for a little bit. He was a Syracuse guy.
Belichick absolutely lost his marbles at Todd Philcox in a game at the Metrodome when I was a kid, like in '92 or something like that. That's what I remember about him. He threw the dumbest pick six at the end of a game, and Belichick lost his mind.
Don McPherson was a backup, I think, for the Eagles for a little bit.
Ryan Nassib was one.
Yeah, Ryan Nassib was in there for a few minutes. Marvin Graves played well up in the CFL for a few years, but you're talking about the NFL. I know, not many.
I'm impressed you could quote a CFL quarterback. You follow him that far, huh?
Yeah. Listen, I keep tabs on my guys. It ain't like our running backs. It ain't Ernie Davis, Floyd Little, Larry Zonka, Joe Morris. And in that crew,
gotcha.
we're stronger at other positions than we are. No Dwight Freeney, Donovan Darius. Those kind of guys. Yeah, we've had a couple guys there. We'll see. He's a fun story. They love showing his family. I'll say that. Will Levis. You buying Will Levis, Jeff?
He's my guy. I buy him more than DeVito, who is a fun story. But Will Levis, I'm still trying to figure out how he ended up dropping as far as he did in the draft. Because, that game he played the other night, I know he's had his ups and downs, but the way he played in that game in that moment when easily it could have all fallen apart. They had 2 back-to-back turnovers. He was responsible for one of those with that horrible pitch to Derrick Henry that they recovered. And for him to get up and make those plays at the end, there's a lot of toughness and moxie. And, I'm trying to think who he compares to, but he's turned into a pretty good first-year player. And I thought the way people talked about him when he got drafted was like he was so overhyped, such a product of all the pre-draft rumor mill and gossip and all this stuff. And the kid can play. And so, again, that was the biggest win Tennessee's had all year long. And he did it in a big stage, in a big way, under adverse circumstances. I like the kid. I like him a lot.
By the way, did I actually rattle off the Syracuse running backs and leave Jim Brown out?
You gave me the whole Ring of Honor, yeah.
Wow.
That's all right. There's so many to count. You lose track of some of the greatest.
R.I.P. Jim Brown. My bad. Out of sight, out of mind. I apologize. Yeah, I don't know how I forgot that one. Eric, listen, other than the fact that Levis is a huge fat ass, good Lord, have you seen a quarterback that gun shows out like Will Levis does?
Yeah, his name was Brady Quinn. He was one of the worst quarterbacks to ever play in the NFL. He needs that EAS. He needs that EAS page on the Men's Health magazines that Brady Quinn had. But I got a text.
You sure he's not eating athletic greens or whatever it was?
AG1.
Come and get
AG1 for the QB1.
Come and get the podcast, AG1. But you're gonna have to share space with our OG sponsor, Gan Asphalt Concrete. But here's a text I got from somebody in the league this morning. Falcons, Pats, Bucks, Vikings, Saints. Didn't need Levis.
Yep.
Don't you think the Vikings would have liked to have drafted Levis? I know Addison's been good, but I think we I'm not. He had one good game going into last night, and he was kind of trash for the first half. But there's something there, right? You're talking about arm talent, you talk about toughness, you talk about all the things that Josh Allen kind of exuded, even when he struggled early on. So yeah, I'll buy into him. I want him to be good. You want to have more good quarterbacks in the NFL. That's why I think everybody jumped to crown Jordan Love after a couple weeks last week, and he came down to earth. He certainly earned an opportunity to start for the Titans next year and probably the year after that, and just work through it. I probably have to eat some crow on DeAndre Hopkins. He's certainly been really good for them, and has given some of those throws are just Levis putting the ball up and that thing being caught by that play being made by the wide receiver and not necessarily the quarterback. But yeah, I that's great. I mean, and you think about Vrabel. As Vrabel's body language on the sideline, like there's part of me that doesn't think he wants to come back, and maybe having a potential franchise quarterback could change his mind.
Yeah, no. Do you like Vrabel's decision to go for too early?
Yeah, it's the second time this year a team's done that and won the game. Using the formula.
I mean, I do like the idea that we're here to win, and I don't care if we lose. We're here to win. I'm going to do what it takes.
Yeah, imagine scoring 2 touchdowns in 3.5 minutes and just earning overtime, a coin flip. Why don't you have that coin flip happen with 3 minutes left of the game as opposed to, with zero seconds left of the game?
Yeah. It was impressive, no doubt. Jeff, do the Ravens keep the top seed in the AFC? Is it now their Super Bowl to lose?
Yeah, I think so. I think they beat the Jaguars this week. I think that they beat Miami. And I think that really the only game that is a concern for them is the 49ers. But if they win those other games, that's not that a loss in that situation is not that big a deal. So I think that they end up 3-1 and finish up at 13-4 and take it. I mean, it's that win they got against the Rams was huge. It could have easily gone the other way. I mean, they were doing a lot of Ravens type stuff in the fourth quarter where Marlon Humphrey was getting roasted and Matthew Stafford was making big plays. But that punt return to win it, kind of karma was on their side for this one. And so I think when you get that kind of game and that kind of moment and you get the boost of Miami losing and the Chiefs losing, I think that, aside from health, the ball's in your court as far as taking the 1 seed. So I think they're not going to let it go.
Yeah. Eric, what do you think? The Ravens now, their Super Bowl to lose from at least in the AFC standpoint?
From the AFC, for sure. I mean, we have them at 55% chance to get the 1 seed. The Niners are the best team in the NFL, though, by like 2 or 3 points, I think, right now. So I think it's their Super Bowl to win. NFC, ironically, might be a tougher road with, Philly and Dallas being pretty solid, and even a team like, Detroit, possibly being spunky. But yeah, the Ravens are the best team in the AFC right now, for sure.
Not giving up on that Lions talk, are you? No matter what, you're just going to keep pushing the Lions. Doesn't matter how bad they look.
Every great team has a trough. I mean, look, every great team has a trough this time of year. We were talking about last year. Oh my God, Patrick Mahomes threw 3 interceptions against Denver. Oh, what is going to become of this team? And obviously that happened. The Rams, 2 years ago, they lost 3 straight. Stafford led the league in picks, blah, blah, blah. Like, Detroit's got a chance still, right? When you have an offense that explosive at their best, the defense is a privilege for sure. But who on the NFC? You look at the NFC quarterbacks, Purdy, Prescott's playing tremendous, as we know, but he has a meltdown game in him every once in a while, and Hurts is injured. So they're not exactly going through the gauntlet that was like Steve Young, your guy Troy Aikman, and so forth.
Yeah, a couple people pointed out Lamar Jackson hasn't gotten hurt yet. Well, maybe he's learned to play better to where he doesn't get hurt, and that it doesn't matter. Yeah, the Ravens will be the 1 seed, but they'll ultimately blow it in the playoffs. That's where they blow it. It's not in the regular season they blow it in the playoffs. That's the reputation that Dak Prescott has to live down. That's where it sits right now. And this is a great shot for him to go ahead and do it and to live it down. All right. What are we looking at this week, Jeff? Week 15 is upon us. You got something in particular that's jumping out at you?
Bills, Dallas. I want to see if Josh Allen can keep it going. I want to see if Dak Prescott can keep doing what he's been doing.
And you're picking the Bills, right?
I'm picking the Bills. Yeah, I'm picking the Bills. I think that's going to be the best game of the week, and it's going to be. I think it'll be very much like that Bills-Eagles game a couple weeks ago, except the Bills will win this time.
Okay. Eric, you're a bit of a masochist. Is it Niners Cardinals that you really got your arms around right now?
No, I mean I'm excited, guys.
We heard you dog last week.
Yeah. I'm excited for Saturday football. I actually think the games are kind of compelling. You have Minnesota with Nick Mullins going into Cincinnati to face Jake Browning and the Bengals. And you got Pittsburgh and Indy in a game that really does, the winner of that game has a leg up in the playoff race in the AFC. And then you have Jeff's Detroit Lions, who I said, in our text train this week that the Chiefs would look, we need some cushion. That's here.
That's the game,
right?
You're most got your eyeballs on right there.
And Detroit needs to win. Detroit only has, by the way, they have all indoor games the rest of the year, and then we'll have an indoor game when they host the playoffs. But Denver goes there this weekend as 5-point dogs. Would be nice to see Detroit get a win and kind of give the Chiefs a little bit of a cushion in the AFC West. So that's going to be a fun day of football, I think. Plus, there's some bowls on that day, too. So it's just going to be a nice day of ignoring my family and watching football.
There it is. Ignore your family.
That's a joke. That's a joke.
Your family, the Eric Eager story. Check it out.
A long ride back to Minnesota.
Yeah, available.
That comment.
Available on Amazon near you. The Battle of the Bays. Bucks and Packers, 6 and 7 teams. Can we please just take just a moment to notice that the NFC has got a lot of crappy teams? Like the whole
You're just noticing that now?
Imagine being Matt Ryan and looking at the NFC South after years of having to go up against Cam Newton and Tom Brady and Drew Brees, and now you have that division. Can we I've never been more right about something in my life than Derek Carr. Derek Carr, they're going to take him out back and shoot him in between the eyes. If you watch that game, Cesar Ruiz wanted to throw him into the Gulf of Mexico.
Isn't he still hurt?
He hates their quarterback.
Is it like 8 broken ribs or something?
He stinks.
Like 5 concussions.
Okay. He stinks. He's going to be the 4 seed in the playoffs.
I mean, look, with my futures portfolio, I hope so, but I'm not holding my breath. The Bucks are the favorite for that division. Baker Mayfield.
No way.
Right now.
No way. The Saints will be the team that's in there. It'll be the Saints that ended up winning that one. And no one will do any bragging about it. That's where it's going. You got the Battle of the Bays, which I think is interesting. But Jets Dolphins, I think it's fun. The Dolphins need to rebound, and the Jets aren't the kind of team you want to rebound. And I don't know if you saw that Zach Wilson threw for 300 yards with 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. He's figured it out.
Best game of the year.
Best game of his life
since he played the Chiefs.
Point spread moved 3 points after the loss by the Dolphins to the Texans on Monday. So that one's on the move. People are buying into Zachy Poo in New York.
Zachy Poo.
Is that what they call him now?
No, that's what I call him because he looks like a 4-year-old.
I thought you meant he's Zachy Poo as in he plays like Poo.
He does play like Poo most games.
The Jets they draft Zach Wilson in the second with the number 2 overall pick, and they trade for Aaron Rodgers. And the back pages of the New York tabloids have Tommy DeVito all over them. Isn't that just how it is? Little brother Jets being left for dead already, and the Giants still garnering the headlines with their trash season that they're having. It's still the big dog. All right, don't forget, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete with free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costs. They've been solving parking lot problems since 1994. Why would you go anywhere else? Go to GannAsphalt.com. That's GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the 2 Deep NFL Podcast.